Welcome to the Awaken Podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science and you awaken to your true power and potential. Let's dive on in, but first, hit that subscribe button. Hello, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, who is Jim LaValle. Jim is someone who is highly respected in the field of integrative and functional medicine. I have had the very good fortune to work with Jim on several projects, and I'm always amazed at the depth of knowledge he has about the complexities of the human body and his ability to communicate them in a way that the rest of us can then also become masters of our own health and destiny. Jim is a renowned clinical pharmacist, author, board-certified clinical nutritionist, and founder of Metabolic Code Enterprises. With over 40 years of experience in the field of health and wellness, Jim has dedicated his life and career to helping people achieve optimum health through personalized, integrative approaches. He's a best-selling author of Cracking the Metabolic Code, a sought-after speaker, and known for his expertise in metabolism, immune health, and biohacking. He created the Metabolic Code, which identifies the root cause of dysfunction in the body and gives people a personalized roadmap to their own health. So let's get ready for a very enlightening conversation with Jim LaValle. Welcome, Jim. So good to have you here.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm so excited.
Come on, it's just another day with us talking.
But I always learn something new from you, and I always feel like I just expand my level of knowledge and understanding, and it gets me excited about my own health and also the opportunities that everybody has to master themselves and create a new destiny. So I think that's right. The conversations that we all need to be having.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So to kick this off, can you share with us your journey in health and wellness in the industry and what inspired you to become a clinical pharmacist and nutritionist?
Well, I was super interested in, fitness and training when I was really young, like age 13. I started training with weights regularly, started getting interested in nutrition. My cousins were importing natural products from Germany into the US, selling them to doctors. And this is back in the 70s, right? And I'd always thought, you guys were a little quirky, but hey, you're selling vitamins. All right, that's cool. But they were some of the top products in the industry, whether it was, Requick Homeopathics or Soroil, which was a major nutrition brand in the 60s and 70s. And so I had that innate, seed in my, in me. But then, I got hurt, couldn't play football going into college. That kind of took me a little bit sideways. And I needed to find another outlet. So weightlifting, training, learning more about health was there. At the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. To be honest with you, I think, God pushed me into pharmacy school because I was just going to play football. That's the only thing. I was a one-track mind. I want to, I'm training a lot. I'm good at football. I'm, Division I scholarship, and all that went away on a play. Collapsed a disc in my neck. It's all over. And I thought, and the reason I chose pharmacy, I was like, I was sick an awful lot as a kid. And I always went to the independent pharmacy, and he always gave me a toy and was a nice guy and gave me medicine. And see, he had this cool store where people walked in, he's talking with them. I think I'll do that. And it was that, I'm telling you, it was that unthought of. But as it turns out, I don't think it was very unthought of. I think it was a guided decision because the pharmacy school I went to, we learned ethnobotany, so ethnopharmacology, plant medicine, learned all about compounding and building molecular structures and organic medicinal chemistry, a little bit different than the curriculum today. Shoot, back when I went through pharmacy school, we weren't going to use a calculator. We had to use a slide rule. So we weren't allowed to use calculators. I'm not kidding. And so that tells you how old that one is. But I think that was invaluable because I got to feel the chemical compounds, make things, understand pharmacognosy, the making of compounds from plants. So I got out of school, and honestly, what transformed me was a moment where I was counseling someone when I first got out of school. That was the big one. So they came up to me, gave me their script. I was in a very rough neighborhood because I was bodybuilding at the time, and looked like nobody'd steal anything from me. And I filled her prescription. She came back to me and she had all the foods in her that would make her diabetes worse. So that, because my family history of diabetes, grandmother fingerless, toeless, blind, diabetic, father was diabetic, all my aunts, uncles, you name it, bunch of diabetics, bunch of short Italians eating too much food. And so I said, can I help you? I'll show you some foods. And she said, yes. So that kind of destroyed that myth that, oh, not everybody's interested in bettering themselves.
Yeah.
I think if you care, people were interested in bettering themselves. So then took her around the store, showed her what was going on. And long story short, that one act of helping her led to developing a whole program for tagging foods through Kroger's, creating cholesterol events, blood sugar events, a food tagging system for heart health that swept the country, all over helping one person. So that's the impetus of what got me into doing what I do today, which is just kind of being on the journey of learning about everything I can that helps people to heal.
Wow, incredible story. Yeah, it's always the little breadcrumbs when we look back and we're like, wow, that's what led me here. It's just a little pivot, or, life just comes in and puts you back on the path that you were meant to be on. That's really cool. So you are the co-chair at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and chair at the International Peptide Society and chief science officer for Lifetime. What is your approach to people starting their journey to performance health?
Yeah, first it's find the journey that they can accomplish, right? Everybody doesn't have the same capacity or desire when they get started. So the first thing I try to do is identify what can people accomplish in order that they start to feel a difference. Like it's a win if you can get somebody to feel a little better, sleep a little better, think a little clearer, feel a little less bloated, just something that gets them started. And there's two kinds of folks. I consider myself somewhat of a Spartan. If you tell me to do 10 things, I'm going to ask you, why didn't you give me 12? Right. And so that's kind of how I am wired. But for a lot of people, sometimes they need core instruction. And the biggest thing for me is you've got to learn how to eat better. And everybody will have a different opinion of what is better. And I can tell you that there is no one diet that works for everyone. I can show it scientifically and I can show it clinically. The same diet doesn't work for everyone. It's that simple. But there are things that hold true. People need to eat more plant food. People should eat more vegetables. They need nutrient dense food. Okay, that's, a big thing. But getting people just to do that, when the average American is only eating 1 to 3 servings total, and that includes like the pickles on their cheeseburger, that's a big hurdle. The next thing to get them started on their journey is to try to move if they can. And then the third piece is understanding your metabolic roadblocks. Where are you at now? Why do you feel the way you feel? And then most importantly, where are you going? Where are you heading with the current lifestyle that you're living? So for me, that's the most important identifiers. And then it gets into, well, let's break down what areas of your chemistry are really the problems. And that's what we developed the metabolic code for. But I think, people really have a lot of challenges in front of them right now. There's a lot going on with individuals. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not moving enough. They're under a tremendous amount of stress. They're staying in sympathetic dominance, like the white tiger's chasing them all day long. They're picking the wrong foods. They're eating too much. They're eating too late. They're eating too often. Or they're doing excessive fasting, which I find, everybody's talking about all this intermittent fasting, and all my people coming in that are doing it, they're doing like 16-day fasts. Their labs don't look very good. So it's like what works for the individual. So those are the key things for me that we have to get to before we start to look at, what are the interrelationships in chemistry that make it so important, and what gets people tumbling down that path of, metabolic aging.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think sometimes we jump to these complex strategies when we don't even have the basics down. And it just puts even more stress on you, right? Like you're not
Oh,
sleeping, you're not walking, you're doing like hit workouts. And then on top of that, you're fasting and it just pushes your whole body over. And I also think that so many people, the way they feel, they think it's normal now. And like I like the term age caging, oh well, I'm 40, so I'm supposed to feel like this. Like this is what it's supposed to be like. And I think that we've lost sight of the potential we have for vitality at any age, which I know is like the cornerstone of your work. So it's important to know what we can do at every age and break through those molds that society's given us.
well, I turned 64 this year. So at 64,
Mhm.
I'm getting old, you know. But I could still get after it. I still can enjoy every aspect of what I want to do. I just have to understand that what I do now, I have to temper it against what I could do when I was 20 and 30 and 40 and 50. But I mean, do I still feel like I've got vitality at this stage of my life? I absolutely do. And I I I couldn't agree with you more that people jump to the complex. Are you doing cold plunges and saunas and drinking Tibetan goji berry juice? I mean, it's that stuff. Are you doing Wim Hof breathing and almost passing out? When it's so important to try to structure things because when you start to fill your day with all the stuff, well, when are you living?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You're working on living longer without actually getting able to do it. So you have to create a lifestyle where there's one big factor in the middle of it, and that is joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I feel good, how do I express my feeling of joy and vitality? Because that's where people miss the boat. It's like, I'm doing this for the sake of it's cool, and I just saw it on Instagram, and I'm gonna dunk myself in an ice bath every day. And I'm not saying ice baths are bad. Water plunges are good. There's good evidence that they have support, but anything worth doing is overdoing. And once again, you're filling the day with things and
Mm-hmm.
not like, hey, I have to do certain tasks. Eating is a task. If you live in Sardinia where people live to 100, one of your tasks is walking down a 19% incline, 400 steps to go to the village and get some fresh food. That's a task, right? And why do they live long? Well, even when you're 85, they're still doing that. And when they're 85, they're still socially relevant, right? They're in the family, they're being included. So anyway, I think those are really important things. Before we get into the path of disordered metabolism, I think we just have to keep in mind, you know, vitality with every stage in life includes aging with grace around people that love you and you love, and you continue to have joy in your life. Because I think that's one of the biggest things. If we have time, I'll tell a story about that because I think it's one of the biggest things that helps people as they age.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And joy is really linked to the heart, right? And we see so much cardiovascular disease as the number one killer. And I do think that that has something to do with it. I have no evidence, obviously, medically that it does, but joy, purpose, passion, enthusiasm, to be possessed by God, that's what enthusiasm means. And I love that. Like, what are you enthused about these days?
Well, I think there's a lot of evidence coming out now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you've got all this evidence of excess sympathetic cone causing, accelerated heart rates and enlarging your heart over time. And I mean, I think our ancient forefathers had a lot of wisdom,
Mm.
and now we're just proving that maybe a lot of the things that they knew and did actually had some science in it. So, it's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, that's right. I know we can get on all these tangents, so I won't
Let's
reel it
go.
back.
Let's
I
get
know.
back. What are we talking about now?
That's right. So you mentioned the metabolic code, and I mentioned it in the intro as well. Can you explain the concept behind the metabolic code and how it helps people achieve optimum health?
Yeah, so I mean, the metabolic code's been my opus, I guess. The first time I wrote about metabolic code was 1997. We actually discovered the very first presentation in my archives in a paper, in a binder, right? Pre laptop, pre computer. But we were looking around at stuff, and I was like, 1997. My God, it's been almost 30 years since I first visualized this concept of whole body metabolism, meaning all systems relate to each other. And so your body works as a system of systems. What the metabolic code did was break down the systems of systems into networks that communicate with each other. And then when these individual networks get out of balance, they start to communicate inflammatory signaling to other networks. So, for example, adrenal, thyroid, pancreas is a network, and that's about stress hormones, blood sugar regulation, and thyroid hormones. And when that's working, you've got energy and you feel good and your brain is vibrant. When it's not working, you feel sluggish and you get cognitively not as sharp and you gain weight and you get tired midday, right? So each of these triads are important because they communicate. Where it came about from was the fact that it's easy to make simple things easy to understand. Oh, your vitamin D is 38. A 38 vitamin D is bad. You need to take more vitamin D. Okay, that's a simple one. But when you do a bunch of labs and you put them down in front of you, it's hard to make a complex set of labs easy, right? So, so what we did with the metabolic code was try to make something incredibly complex easy to understand. And that's really you understanding in an easy way what areas of your metabolism are broken, and then, or what roadblocks are in front of you, and then what you can do to correct them. And the reason for this was what I kept finding is most people end up having they fall into these buckets or triads pretty strongly, and they have a very difficult time figuring out that, oh, when I'm stressed out, I stress eat. I can't figure out how to quell my comfort food cravings, and therefore I have no self-esteem. I can't control my food eating habits, and therefore I'm gaining weight, and I'm a bad person. And when in reality, it was just your cortisol levels are high, your serotonin pool dropped, and your brain said, please eat some comfort food. Eat that chocolate-covered pretzel with sea salt on it, right? Go through that bag of tortilla chips, and so when you begin to be able to explain chemistry to a person, that's the first step. Here's how you feel. The next step is the metabolic code scores. It has a metaflammation index. Metabolic inflammation leads to inflammation aging. So the metabolic code is set out to look at your labs, look at your symptoms, look at your biometrics, look at wearable data, and say, how far along the journey of metabolic inflammation are you, and where are you expressing your future health? It's not telling you, gee, you're a diabetic. Doctors already know how to tell you you're a diabetic already. There's established guidelines. What we have to worry about is, gee, your blood sugar is at 98. And depending on which rubric you use, you either have a 72% risk or an 81% risk of being a person with diabetes in the next decade. Why don't we cut that path off and go back to vitality and resiliency? So what are the strategies to correct that? So that's what the metabolic code really was developed for, was to track your improvements in the real world with labs that are associated with when they're trending out of bounds or out of bounds, early death, loss of vitality, not longevity, or keeping them labs in check, taking you to a chance for vitality and longevity. And you have to remember one thing: you're only as strong as your weakest organ. So that's why there's 5 triads. It's adrenal, thyroid, pancreas, gut, immune, brain. cardiopulmonary, neurovascular, the big heart disease one that's in the middle, liver, lymph, kidney, and then sex hormones. So when you think of that, it's really important to say, it's not about how hard you push your body. It's about how well you keep your body in balance.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that early on from my mentors. When you said my journey, I had the best mentors, amazing doctors that taught me a lot about keeping the body in balance, which is kind of more of the German homotoxicology view than let's turbocharge that person, right? So that's about the metabolic code, and kind of where it came from was trying to make the complex simple.
Yeah, which is an art in and of itself, right? It's like looking at Apple products. They're so complex, but they're beautiful and simple. And sometimes we don't appreciate those things as much. And for me, the metabolic code helps people prevent them from chasing their tails, right? Like, and putting out these little fires, but not really getting to the core of what's happening. And I think it helps us identify that critical factor of what's the one thing, if I could put my money, time, and resources into one thing, what is it going to be that's going to give me results across the board instead of just focusing on one little piece of it. So,
No,
yeah.
exactly right. I mean, lipids are a great example, right? Like, oh my God, my lipids are high. Should I take a statin? And the reality is lipids go up for a lot of reasons. Lipids go up if you're insulin resistant. Lipids go up if you have environmental burden. Lipids go up if your cortisol's high. So to your point, well, if my cortisol's high and that's causing my gut to be leaky and my lipids to be off and it's making me not sleep at night, maybe I should focus on that. And you said it beautifully. Find where all the roads meet in your metabolic dysfunction, and then allow for the correction through I would say through a practical program.
And it helps us listen to our bodies and also know, like, for me, I always explain it as like a canary in the coal mine. They would release a canary, and if it came back, it was safe. And we all have a canary that kind of pops up in those times that we're like overburdened or overstressed. And so it helps us like learn what our canaries are. So then we can be like, okay, let me take a step back and get it before the forest fire, happens while it's still a little bushfire, and I can just like tap it out. So that, yeah, I can go on again with this topic for a long time. So I'll reel it back in once more, but we'll talk more about the metabolic code another time. And you mentioned this next question I wanted to ask, like, what do you find most people struggle with? And you touched on that already. Is there anything else that, you said fatigue, brain fog, energy levels,
Weight,
of course.
1 in 2 Americans are diabetic, pre-diabetic. 79% of people are overweight, 43% are obese, but they're all connected. That's what's interesting is, most people that are overweight would tell you, yeah, my energy isn't good. I'm not thinking as good as I used to. I have a lot of business executives, athletes, people that just feel like a burnout effect, like I can't think or concentrate as well. A lot of that has to do with, excessive, cortisol, a lot of stress response, and if your blood sugar's off, remember, dementia is now thought of as type 3 diabetes. And then if you're not sleeping, and there's something called the glymphatic system, that it is the clearing of your toxins from the kind of your brain and your cerebral spinal fluid, but it only opens up at night when you're sleeping. So if you're having trouble sleeping and you're not getting enough sleep, you're not allowing your body to detoxify, right? So I think for a lot of people, they don't want to make decisions after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They get midday crashes. They're not thinking clearly. And I think cognitive functions incredibly important. Obviously, with the GLP-1 revolution, everybody's jumping on to lose weight with the peptides from the GLP-1s, but most people aren't even doing those right. They're just once again thinking it's a wonder drug, shooting it and getting a shot once a week, and they're losing muscle and fat, and they're not changing their habits. and therefore the weight's going to come right back and they get off of it, and of course that's what
And
you're
they're and they're worse off, right? Because now you've lost your muscle, which is a key factor of longevity. So then you're just, yeah, just in a
doing.
worse place.
You couldn't make this up. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I really, I lecture a lot on GLP-1s and weight loss, right, and I know at Lifetime, we're putting together we've put together a program where we're measuring lean mass, getting people to move, giving them diet instruction, giving them support to keep their lean mass nutritionally. And I think those are important aspects of, that struggle. But I got to tell you, I'm going to go back to one of the biggest things I hear all the time is I'm not thinking as sharp as I used to. And it's people in their 20s and 30s. We used to say you're 40 now. Now I honestly could say you're 30 now.
Oh,
A lot of people at younger and younger ages complaining about issues that I didn't used to hear from them until they were in their 40s and 50s.
that's scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we know there's a path out of that. So we'll do our best to get it out to as many people as possible. So you're a renowned formulator in the supplement industry. I personally love taking all the metabolic code supplements and have had great results from all of them. What makes your formulation stand out from the saturated marketplace? Because we know there's, you walk into any store and there's aisles of supplements.
It is not a blue ocean.
No.
I look, the supplement industry, it's tough because I've always designed products with clinical results in mind first. And I'm not saying this to belittle any company that's out there because, as we all know, there's a lot of different ways to heal people and different nutrients. I get it. But my method of formulating is to look at it from a systems biology approach. What's upstream and downstream and related to the problem that I'm solving. Look for nutrients that will do that or multitask in doing that so it can perform several areas of function in what I'm trying to correct. Use the product that was in the clinical trials. So look at the exact extraction that was used in the clinical trials and use it in the clinical dose. And I always kind of use a rule of thumb where I do at least 2/3 the clinical dose if I'm combining 2 or 3 things together in order to get effect. And then I would say, the other piece is just the follow through on the product. Is it made in a manufacturing facility that I know it's going to be clean? Where are the raw materials coming from? And I just, I think my pharmacy background, like I said, when I started out on this path, I'd have never imagined that I loved formulating and looking at plants and looking at nutrients like I do now. I absolutely get geeked every time I see a new compound, and so that's what I think stands apart. It's just the innovation side. It's the ability to look at new technologies related to dietary supplement delivery, as well as drug delivery. We obviously, as chair of the International Peptide Society, we look at novel ways to deliver things like peptides, like the GLP-1s. So it's, I think that's what just separates it. It's just passion. I don't think, there's a lot of good people out there formulating. The difference is I don't formulate to a price point. And once again, in general, products that I formulate, I know are more expensive, but I'm formulating to get a result so that you feel it if you're going to spend money on it.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of obviously we all fall victim to marketing and greenwashing and just, there's a compound or something that's trending and they want that on the label. So they'll put a little bit, but it has no actual results in it. So
that's right.
Want to know. And also, like you said, the manufacturing process, like we know a lot of supplements, there's lead, there's other, toxins in there that you don't want in your system because then you're just wasting your money or you just pee them out. Who wants that?
or you could get in trouble. They put adulterated product in it. There's been instances of people getting really sick from an adulterated product, buying it from another country.
Yeah.
Like buying a raw material from China, it comes over and here it's got pesticides in it or something else that somebody gets sick on. So or they switched the plant. It
Oh.
looked similar under the spectrophometric graph, but they kind of alter that, right? So there's a lot of issues around that.
So one product we're all very excited about is Synapsin LPT. Can you briefly just introduce what Synapsin LPT is and its primary benefits?
Yeah, this is kind of one of my all-time favorites. I think principally because I really started from the very beginning with it. Uh, we first utilized Synapsin with Corvette Race Team. And Synapsin is a ginseng, a highly concentrated ginsenoside that comes from Meyer Panax ginseng. So you can't get the same effect just taking ginseng. It's highly concentrated for one of the ginsenosides. And what it basically does, it helps to balance your neuroimmune regulation in your brain. So if you think of your brain more of like as a circuit breaker box that can overheat and then you blow a fuse, it's kind of what happens. You know, you get enough stress, you get under what's called allostatic load, the circuit breaker switch, and now you get depressed or anxious or get PTSD or panic disorder or feel, a change in the way you feel. I have insomnia, whatever it is. So what the role is to cool down that circuit breaker box and then allow your neurochemicals to perform at their best. So when people utilize Synapsin, they say a few things, and I can give a lot of different examples, but better cognition, better focus, better acuity, better performance on whatever sport they're doing. They feel like they've got better coordination time. But the reason behind it is that if you look at the lab studies, it's really helping that immune balance in the brain. So you don't make a lot of oxidative stress in the brain, which then damages neurons and, triggers inflammatory responses. So that's the principal thing that it's doing. But it's pretty exciting because when we first did it, we couldn't figure out how to, you couldn't take enough of it in a powder. So we had to figure out how do we dissolve it in a nasal spray.
Wow.
And we used it for Corvette Race Team as a nasal spray, and they won Le Mans. It wasn't doping. It was nothing like that. It was totally, they made a big TV show about it. So it was all cool. And so we found out, wow, when people get under duress, they lose their brain coherence. You aren't thinking as clearly. You think you're going to step on the step correctly and you fall, whatever that reason is, or you're thinking this gets foggy headed. So your reaction time is slower. So after that, several years went by where we were tracking people of various, from executive stress, children with attention issues, people with attention issues, midday executive fatigue, you name it, right? Anything around that concept. But it couldn't be sold as a dietary supplement because you don't take dietary supplements through your nose, right? Your nose isn't a natural way to eat, so it can't be a dietary supplement.
Right.
Whereas companies have done nasal sprays and try to skirt around that. I just said, I can't do it. So I got to wait. Well, all of a sudden, someone came in my life and made it possible for me to deliver the active ingredients in Synapsin by a tablet. And it was just by absolute serendipity. I have to tell you, when I look back, at the breadcrumbs, there were so many serendipitous moments that you go, wow. So my son is at Utah State. His roommates at Utah State, they're talking about what's your dad do? What's your dad do? So, my son, of course, my dad's famous and does this. He's with A4M and blah, 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 and it's written all these books. And the other guy, his buddy said, well, my grandpa and dad have a dietary supplement company and pharmaceutical company, and this is what they do. They've created a proprietary way of delivering a solid state liposome so you could chew it up or swallow it and absorb very difficult to absorb molecules. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I've been looking for. I immediately got on a plane to Las Vegas to meet them. And when I met them, this is the real deal, worldwide patent pending, all drugs, all nutrients on this process. So 70 nanometers average particle size is so small that it can pass right through your cell membrane.
Wow. Wow.
And then the liposomal delivery means it's not going to go through first pass effect. Your liver's not going to get at it and make it happen. It's going to go right into the tissues, cross the blood-brain barrier. And then for all compounds that are difficult to absorb, we can apply that technology. But why it was special for Synapsin was now people could chew one up and they could say, wow, I feel like I'm sharper longer in my day. And that's big, right? If you only did one thing for somebody, if you could get them to feel more alert without a stimulus. So this doesn't have any caffeine in it. It doesn't have that white tiger effect. In fact, it's doing the opposite. It's balancing out that nervous system because of the help for immune balance. And that means that you're actually helping, in my opinion, you're helping that longevity cycle because you're not staying in sympathetic dominance. You're balancing your nervous system out. When you do that, you are more accurate with your movements. You think clearer, and you can end up not having the up and down crashes because the circuit board's on fire. So that's synapsin. So it works on the microglial cells of the brain. If you look at all the research, the microglial cells are the immune cells of the brain that are responsible for triggering that neuroinflammation. There's other processes going on too, but that's the biggie.
Well, yeah, it's super exciting. And I was reading the white paper. It reminds me of that Limitless, the movie Limitless,
Like, yeah, not quite that good where I can memorize the book in an hour, but it is. I have to tell you, I have a lot of people that they've been able to really limit if they're using, when people say they have adult attention deficit, I kind of laugh. So what you're telling me is, you went all through grade school, you got straight A's. You went all through college, you passed, you got your degree. And now you got a total adult attention deficit. What you really have is adult burnout. You pushed your neurons too hard. You created allostatic load. That circuit breaker box, flipped some switches off. And now you got to repair that so you can think clearly again. Right? So I think it's interesting because we don't think that way. We want a diagnosis for the now and not necessarily, what through my life was I doing that brought me to now? And then how can I reverse that? I think that's super important. That's why the metabolic code is so important. And that's why finding high impact products that change the chemistry, they change the signals, they turn the circuit breaker box, flip that circuit breaker, and get that juice flowing through that circuit that relates to certain organ functions again. I think it's critical. And I know it's kind of an odd way or symbol to think of it or analogy, but I think it's one of the best analogies for it because that's kind of how it actually works.
No, I think it's a great metaphor. Yeah. The circuit breaker. So there's a lot of liposomal supplements, like liquid liposomal on the market. How does this tablet technology differ?
Yeah, I think this is where the big breakthrough was because all you have to do, and I know you will be researching like crazy once I make this following statement. Liquid liposomes in general are unstable. And there's all kinds of papers showing the stability problems with them. So you can make a liquid liposome and it could be phenomenal the first 60 days. But the problem is that as it continues to sit on the shelf, because of basically the electron attractions, the attractions of this emulsion, they start to come and stick back together. So they come back and start making macromolecules. The particle size goes from 70 nanometers to 3,000 nanometers, and you're not getting that across to be absorbed.
No.
70 to 3,000. So and I'm not saying there's there's probably some liquid liposomes that stay stable longer, but if you look up liposomes, that is the problem. And the solution was doing a solid state liposome. So one, it's that it's in a solid state, so it stays stable. They don't stick back together. And we've got this really cool electron microscopy that's fluoroscope. So you see the little particles flying around and they're not clumping together.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
In my opinion anyway, but I'm a geek on this stuff. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. Biohackers have been pharmacists for the last, since the time of Galen. We've been alchemists. We've been at this for a long, long time. So I think that's one. So it's stable to the date of expiration, and the date of expiration is a good 2-3 years out. So you have a really stable shelf life. Obviously, the technology is proprietary. You can put it in a powder or a tablet. So you can put it in a powder, drink it, and get the same effect, which I think is cool. I think it's cool that it's chewable. A lot of people don't want to swallow a lot of pills. So, and then because of the effect of this, many times you can get by chewing one up twice a day. So, curcumin, for example, not really well absorbed. Berberine is only 0.3% absorbed.
Wow.
So if I can improve that absorption, all these phenomenal studies on these botanicals on what's called class 4 compounds, difficult to absorb compounds, now I get the benefit from them.
Yeah.
Because I know, I'm telling you that I know a lot of people tried turmeric or curcumin and they thought, I don't know how much it improved me, depending on what brand they got, right? I know with what we're doing with the, with Synapsin, with this technology, it helps to really get that ingredient to absorb. And I'd probably say the last real innovation is just that we can combine other things with the technology together. So that to me is really big.
Yeah, super exciting. And how is Synapsin LPT different from other cognitive enhancing supplements on the market? You kind of mentioned that it doesn't give you that edgy effect, I've taken some cognitive supplements where I am just on edge. I feel like my heart's beating, heart's racing, and also I need to take more of them as I go on, right? I become desensitized to the effects.
Right.
How is Synapsin different from others in that way?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, you do habituate to stimulants, so your body starts to metabolize them. And so caffeine, once a cup of coffee was fantastic. Now you need a bucket of espresso, right? And then the bucket of espresso ends up making you feel tired. You get the reverse effect. That's called a hormetic effect. So in one dose, you get the effect, but in a greater dose over time, you get the opposite effect. That's called the law of hormesis in pharmacy. And so all of us have had that with drinking 8 energy drinks a day, big coffees, taking caffeine, taking stimulants. It ends up having that negative effect. So Synapsin doesn't act on the sympathetic nervous system. So you're not going to feel a stimulus. All you're going to feel is, hey, I'm calm and I can focus and I can think clear. And my focus gets a lot better. I've even had people tell me that they only use it on days when they really need to focus. Because sometimes they could I'll tell them we'll chew a half because there's healing benefits to Synapsin, right? When you're talking about balancing out the neuroinflammation, that means you're balancing out the meta-inflammatory process known as neuroinflammation, and you're just trying to prevent that from happening. So its main difference, no stimulant effect. If you had to work on something at 8 p.m. at night and you needed a boost, you could chew one up and you're going to be able to go to bed.
Wow. And not disrupt your sleep, your deep sleep.
If anything, it'll make you sleep deeper.
Wow.
because it's just normalizing your chemistry. Now,
Mhm.
that being said, I mean, I know people that, have taken more than one before competitions and, they do incredibly well. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stories about that.
Mm. Is it a supplement where, like, okay, if I take vitamin D, I know I need it, but I'm not going to feel an effect immediately. Over time I'll feel better. Maybe my
Oh, yeah.
mood will improve. I'll feel strong. Will I feel something immediately, or is it over, take it for a month or two or three, and then you'll really start to like see the difference?
Yeah, there's a lot of products that you'll never see the difference, but your
Mm.
lab might look better. Okay,
Right.
which is good. Not exciting though, right? I
Right.
mean,
No,
or
no.
if you're, I mean, it's like I said, if you're, to me, getting people to feel better first, it gets them to buy in that taking
Mm.
supplements matter. So I've had people on the very first dose within 3 minutes feel the difference on this.
Mm.
I remember being in a boardroom with 3 former Navy SEALs, and I gave them everybody a pill, and I didn't tell them what it was for. I just said, "Could you guys all chew this up?" And they're like, "Oh, come on, what is it? I don't want it." No, nobody's going to get sick from it. I'm not trying to poison you, right? And it chewed it up, and all 3 of them within about 3 minutes said, "What's in that?"
Wow.
Because my focus is there, but I'm not feeling jacked up. So I
Mm.
felt mental clarity come back, and I could tell I'll former SEAL team guys. There's all business people now. Um, I can tell you story after story that way. And then one of the coolest ones was this motorcycle racer that, is a good motorcycle racer, but we started giving him Synapsin and he was using it with his training and improving his diet. And all of a sudden on his racing simulator, he literally got up to 24 times the speed of a new track that he was going to run on.
Wow.
He gets on the new track and posts the 3rd fastest time in the history of the course. And he just did it on a simulator, but he could do it so fast. And we asked him, well, how did you feel? He said, I felt like I was anticipating the bike.
Mm.
But I was with the bike, right? That's that lack of separation between it's like a neural link
Mhm.
between the machine and the human,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of cool, you
Yeah.
know? And then, I mean, I have so many stories of just people that just say, thank you so much. I'm thinking clearer now. My days aren't, I'm not crashing. People that, even had, athletes that maybe had a TBI and they were having trouble clearing from that. Um, it just helps to balance that immune response out. And when you do that, magic starts to happen with your brain. I think people don't realize a lot of their fatigue actually might be coming from their brain.
Mm.
They think it's like my muscles or why am I so tired? It's because if you've blown those circuits,
Mm.
you don't have good signaling from the brain down.
This question just came to mind. So if we're taking synapsin and we're trying to heal that circuit breaker, what are some other things that we can do that actually work to repair that parasympathetic nervous system, to bring that back online
Sure.
with it, to kind of have
Yeah.
like this a complete approach?
Well, I mean, I think box breathing's really good. Do a 4-minute box breathing 2 or 3 times a day. Not hard to do. Do it mid-morning. Get rid of the stress of the morning if you have it. Do it mid-afternoon. Get rid of the stress of the afternoon, and do it at bedtime. 3 to 4 minutes, 3 times a day. Really big. That's a big plus. Getting adequate sleep. I mean, sleep is huge. Yeah, not eating high, sugar. Don't eat foods that spike your blood sugar.
Mm.
Foods that are, high carb, high sugar, you want to avoid that because when you spike your blood sugar, you release cortisol, your insulin levels go up. That's going to reduce blood flow and oxygen to your brain.
Mm.
So the food side is that. And then if you're going to just be, moderate exercise is really good. So you think of zone 2, you walking at a pace that, you can't quite have a conversation at,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
awesome, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and then there's, obviously taking phospholipids is important, getting phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylserine or, any of the phospholipids that help make acetylcholine in your brain will help to balance out the adrenaline and noradrenaline, because acetylcholine is the balance to that. So that's a kind of a, something you could throw in your smoothie is phospholipids, and then if you're really just stressed out, a lot of work, I'd probably think of something like theanine, in addition to the synapsin. But I can tell you, when you don't do the synapsin, people don't get that, hey, it's a brighter day feeling.
Yeah.
So I think it's key.
Yeah. So what are some of your go-to biohacks that you use in your life daily?
Well, it's interesting when you ask this question. I think one is I do have quiet time each day. So every morning I usually start with quiet time. And I don't even do quiet time to think about anything. I sit and try to be empty for the first 15 or 20 minutes of my day, to allow things to kind of come to me more creatively. So that's one. Two is I drink a lot of hydrogen water. I wrote papers on it about 10 years ago, and everybody was looking at me like I had two heads. And now everybody's like, oh, hydrogen water. It's so odd when I've been accused of being a little bit ahead of the curve. And so I think it's funny, but hydrogen water is a great one because it does reduce oxidative stress. I'll tell you one of the things I did. I started using red light therapy with a helmet to keep my hair growing in my old age, so I have a head of hair.
Nice.
So using red light therapy with the correct angstroms of light, right? So do that. Obviously, I've been using Synapsin for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And
no wonder you've lived 20 lifetimes. I always wonder how you get so much done. So that's been the key the whole time.
I think it has something to do with it.
Yeah.
I really do. I seem to process really quick, even at my, I want to say even at my age. Like I always tell people, like, when people say, oh, age is just a number. Well, it is. Yeah, I feel 40, but I'm still 64. Even Da Vinci dies, right?
Yeah.
So, you pass on to something more grand, right? But I'm just saying it is interesting. So I think that's big. Obviously, my other daily hacks, I use peptides. So peptides are signaling compounds that are made up of amino acids that are less than 50 amino acids long, and they have specific functions in the body. So I love, and obviously as the chair of the International Peptide Society, I wrote a book on peptides.
Yeah.
I would hope I believe in them and use them.
Yeah.
All right, come on. Yeah. And I think using the liposomal technology, you've got, I have a few companies that are using Synapsin, so I'm real happy about that. I started a company for sports performance, Metabolic Elite, so I'll use some of their liposomal tablets. Mental Case is a product coming out that's really cool using Synapsin. I just think it's targeted for, hey, I'm not thinking as sharp as I should, right? So I think that's very cool. I do it. I literally do it every day, chew them up. And I think the biggest thing that I don't do is I don't try to overdo it. I don't try to overdo. I might do that intellectually or with my businesses or my knowledge, trying to learn, but I don't try to overshift my body. It's, what are the things I need to keep that balance as I'm aging? And I've just had 3 really killer workouts, 3 days in a row in 100-degree heat in my garage. And I think, I think it's working pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
practice what you preach. And that's why one of the reasons I really respect you, because, a lot of people will preach, but they don't practice it, and you can see it, and so, yeah, you are a living example of all of of the knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that, honestly, Ina, because I love I love talking about longevity.
Mm.
People, like my mom had dementia.
Mm.
I didn't get to enjoy talking to my mom. And there's a lot of things, but before we started our talk, sometimes there's things that get buried in you a little bit. One of my regrets is that she had dementia before her and I really got to get reconnected again
Mm.
because she got it early. So I want people to, learn how to take care of their body. And it's a huge passion. And I think, it's one of those things where no one's going to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
that simple. It's like, it's work, but it's worth it. How bad do you want to feel good as you're aging? And what kind of effort can you put into it? And sometimes the tiniest first step, right, can lead to the next tiny step, can lead to the slightly bigger step that can get you on your true journey to feeling healthy. So important. And I really appreciate you just mentioning that, because I have lived my life to really just be an example that, hey, you can do this and it can be an everyday practice. You don't have to draw your blood every day and do $2 million worth of,
Yes,
work a year in order to be able to be healthy.
that's right.
Sardinians don't do that.
No, they
Neither
don't.
the Okinawans, neither do the folks at Icarus, Greece, right? There's these pockets of people that are staying healthy without, resorting to that. So we just have to swim a little bit upstream here, because, we have a lot of challenges in front of us between the stress and the devitalization of our food and those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And just our environments. I think that's a big thing. And learning how all those things come into play and how they affect us. I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
And you're right. Like it's our responsibility. You can't trust the marketing. You can't trust you. Like you said, everyone has a different diet and they have all the research to back it up. But what works for you and how do you communicate with your own body and know what's best for you and how you feel good. And with that, what is the motto you live your life by? You mentioned it earlier, but I just kind of want to
Oh,
close on
people
that.
deserve vitality at every stage in life. And with vitality comes joy.
That's right. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. And lastly, how can everybody connect with you and learn more about your work and products
Oh
and other
my
things you're
gosh.
up
I'm in the
to?
modern world now, Ina. Have you noticed?
Yes, I have. I have noticed. I'm very proud.
Our listeners should know. I mean, I was kicking and screaming doing that because honestly, it's age, right? Age bias, right? I'm pretty forward on a lot of stuff, but I'm kind of like, it's private,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So at jimlaval.com, metaboliccode.com, metabolicelite.co, and then my Instagram, which, I guess it's blowing up. I have no idea. The real Jim LaValle. They tell me it's getting crazy traction. So that's good. Do you want me to tell you something?
Yeah, always.
This is really interesting. I think it is. 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now, I looked myself up for the first time on the internet.
That's
First
always
time.
fun game.
Well, I was shocked at how much stuff that I was on.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I was just, oh my gosh,
yeah.
I'm really out here.
That's
So
awesome.
anyway, it's pretty interesting stuff. And you just have to watch you just have to, I think the biggest thing I can leave everybody with, they can listen to a lot of the things I have to say is just watch the gimmicky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the biggest ones is the customized probiotic piece. I mean, that's a funny piece. It's just doesn't have a lot of data behind it.
Mm.
I think that's one that people should watch. You have parent DNA verified probiotics, for example, that seed your intestine and actually correct microbiome imbalances that are significant. But if you don't know why you're having that microbiome imbalance, it won't matter what probiotic you use.
Oh.
Getting back to what you said, get to the root cause. I mean, am I eating too many saturated fats? Do I have reduced blood flow to my intestines? So I'm making a bunch of lipopolysaccharide. I mean, what's the big deal? So anyway, I talk a lot about that apparently now on social media. So you'll be able to find all about gut immune health now.
Yeah, I'll go dig into those because I'm really interested. Well, thank you so much for your time today and another enlightening conversation. And I hope we get a chance to sit down again and dive into another area, another topic, and inspire people to really like take control of their destiny.
Well, I'll be here when you ask.
That's right. Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you, Jim.
All right. Thanks, Ina.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Awaken Podcast. I hope you feel empowered and inspired. Hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and hit that bell for future notifications. Until we meet again, Uhui ho.